Hi everyone, welcome to Unit 9 of Economics is for Everyone course. Hope you're all having a good time so far. Our previous unit was about utility. This unit here is going to be about production, so we're kind of looking at the other side of the demand-supply relationship here. So what are the important factors that go into production? When we look at production, we can look at it in terms of factors of production. And some textbooks will tell you there's three, some will tell you there's four. I feel a lot more comfortable talking about four. So what are those factors? So first up, you have land. Basically, everything goes on the land. You can't pretty much do anything without land. The next factor of production would be your labor, your workers. You need to have people working on the land to achieve anything. And then you'll have what we call capital, and capital could be in the form of your machines or your buildings and so on. So you have your workers working with the capital on the land. And then our fourth factor of production, which I find to be one of the most important ones, often left out, and that is entrepreneurship. And that is the people that take the risks by investing in particular things. They're the people that buy the capital. They're the people that buy the land. They're the people that employ people. They're the ones that are basically risking everything if it all goes wrong. But they're also the people that potentially have the highest returns when things go well. And without your entrepreneurs, then basically you don't have anyone holding it all together. So you need people to take the risks and people to make the investment decisions. So that's our factors of production. In regards to factors of production, there's plenty to talk about, but within the limits of this course, I'm going to focus on one particular factor of production, and that is labor. That is your workers. I feel this is probably relevant to most people. So what do I want to talk about in terms of different skill sets? So we all have different natural abilities and different skill sets, and we can enhance those skills through various courses, through on-the-job training, apprenticeships, or some form of higher education. And why is it important to have different skill sets? So effectively, so we can complement each other. So you get someone who maybe is very good at the planning side of things, and someone who's good at the management side of things. You may have someone who's very good at operating machinery and things like that. We've got people that are very good people, good at communicating. You others have got mathematics and that sort of thing. So by getting different people with different skill sets to work together so their skills complement each other, we can actually improve the quality of the output, and all of you can also be rewarded respectively. Okay, so now it's time for me to get a little bit technical. I know some of you get excited about this, some of you not so, but still it's fairly important. So I introduce to you now is what we call producer theory, and we have isoquants and isocosts. So what is an isoquant? So that is a combination of your factors of production that produce the same level of output. So you see the isoquant line? So that is a certain level of production using various combinations of capital. But what combination of capital and labor should we be using? Well, that's where we have the isocost line. In this case, it's a line, as we call it a curve, but it's a line anyway. And where the isocost is tangent to the isoquant would be your optimal combination of labor and capital to produce a particular output. So all the other points on that particular isoquant cost more money. Effectively, like if you could have too much capital, you could have too much labor. So there's an optimal combination of labor and capital to produce the lowest cost you can. And that's where your isoquants and isocosts come into play. Once we have determined our optimal combination of factors of production, so as you mentioned about capital and labor, for example, they tend to be more flexible, meant to be more variable. We then can actually calculate our costs. So we have our marginal cost, so that is the cost of each additional unit produced. And also we have our average cost. And the average cost, as it suggests, is the average cost of each unit produced. So as the marginal cost is increasing, that tends to pull the average cost up. As you can see, you've got a very nice relationship where the marginal cost actually passes through the lowest point on the average cost. So once the marginal cost is higher than average cost, the marginal cost will then start to pull the average cost up, and then you get this nice little U shape. We also have, and this is going to be feeding into our demand and supply in the next unit, what we call marginal revenue and average revenue. And we use these with our costs, average and marginal costs, to determine a price. So when your marginal cost equals your marginal revenue, that would be your quantity produced. And then we extend the line further up to our average revenue line, which is directly above your marginal revenue, and that will determine your price. And quantity and price are also affected by what market structure that you happen to be in. And that again is for another unit. I'll explain how we have different shaped average revenue and marginal revenue, and how that interacts with your marginal cost and your average cost to determine your price and quantity. And this is what we call equilibrium when we get the price and quantity through these mechanics. Bear in mind, equilibrium in the real world may not always be reached, because we may know what our marginal costs and average costs are. Often demand is very difficult to predict, and demand determines our average revenue as well as your marginal revenue. So there's a little bit of guesswork, a little bit of predictions and estimates and all that go into determining how much of a particular good should be produced, or depending on the market structure, how we actually price those goods as well. We can also take a look at the economy as a whole, and I'll be talking about that a little bit later as we enter the sphere of macroeconomics. So as you here we can see, it's a very basic example of a two-good economy. We have what we call a production possibility frontier. I believe I mentioned that in an earlier unit. So I want to elaborate a little bit further by what we actually have here. So the production possibility frontier is the curve, the frontier, the line, whatever you want to call it, that has all the combinations of goods that basically optimally use your resources in your economy. So as you can see here, we got a green X. So producing at the green X, that is the optimal production for that economy. If you're producing at the yellow X, that is also possible, but it is not an optimal combination. So for example, you can still produce the same level of good A, but you can increase your good B, taking it all the way up to the PPF. And we got the red cross. Well, that shows what is outside of the production possibility frontier, and that actually is not possible, well, at this time anyway. There are ways you can actually move your production possibility frontier through improving your technology, for example, or maybe through increasing population even. There's like several ways that this line, this curve can actually be pushed further out. Yeah, and that's looking at production on more of a larger scale. I'll be talking a little bit more about the macro stuff a little bit later on. That takes us now to the end of our production. So just sum it up, we looked at factors of production. We got 4 of those. We had a little bit of a focus on labor. We looked at isoquants and isocosts, as well as marginal and average costs. And we looked at a more broader picture in respect to the PPF, production possibility frontier. So our next lesson is going to be demand and supply. This is where courses often start off, or it's fairly beginning, close to the beginning of those. And here I've set you up a little bit. I talked about utility, which feeds into demand, and now I've talked about production, which feeds into supply. So now we'll see how those two interact within the next lesson. So anyway, thank you for listening, and remember to do the 3 multiple choice questions. Thank you very much.